riddle of putting a lens in a space and predicting that it stays at least between 250 and 750 microns, which is a massive forgiving range, if you think about it. So it is incredible. So this course is, I would say, one of the first courses I've ever seen, and it had to be done, to bring people together who really care about sizing and who don't want outliers. And none of us have achieved that yet. We've all been working in different ways from different angles. No pun intended. And we hope that at the end of this hour and 15 minutes rush through the concepts, you'll get an idea, and maybe you'll have a little thought about how to talk to your reps and the company that makes this wonderful technology about how they've been ignoring this issue. Yeah, so that's my little soapbox speech. I'll just get off my soapbox now. But no, I'm seriously, it does keep me up at night. So we have a star-studded panel here. And just to reiterate, this will be said, so no one has to say this again. Basically, the risks of the ICL are in sizing. That's basically it. I mean, you can have a surgical problem, but those are, in skilled hands, those are exceedingly rare. And if they do happen, they're easily manageable. It's almost always due to the wrong or the non-ideal size going in the eye. And the idea that you can have a low volt because there's a hole now, it's not a problem, is how many people have already seen little bits of anterior subcapsular cataract in low volts with a hole? Yeah. So the fact that there's a publication out there that had none, congratulations. Just do more eyes. How many people have left lenses in that are uncomfortably high, but the angle is open, the pressure is okay? Let's see how it looks like in a year. Yeah. Those are the eyes that the lens has been purchased, and then 5, 7, 9 years later may come back with pigment dispersion glaucoma. And then you've seen them. And so anybody else pigment dispersion glaucoma? So then, now how easy it is to treat pigment dispersion glaucoma? It's like, is that the easy one to treat? No, it's actually one of the hardest ones to treat. But whose responsibility is that? Yeah, it's yours. So there is no such thing as ignoring the outliers if you want to do no harm first. So let's look at the history of sizing before we get going. So white to white has been the method since the 90s from the company. And they have included some other factors now in a multivariate regression, so it makes it a little bit better by putting in these other factors. Lovisolo really was the first to raise the alarm about and the concept of sulcus to sulcus. Doherty, very grateful to him because he was part of the FDA trial, and he did a regression analysis, and he also said sulcus to sulcus is better. And that was way back in the early 2000s. So this is not new information. Now Kojima in Japan said, yes, that's right, but let's face it, some lenses are higher than other. So if you've got a lens rise that's 150 microns higher, then you have to move the ICL 150 microns higher to get the same volt. It's arithmetic, yeah? It's pretty obvious. So it's very clever. And then anterior segment OCT comes along, and Nakamura and Kojima, they worked together. They started using anterior segment measurements, so the anterior chamber width and what you can measure as the lens rise on an anterior segment scanner, but which is not the same as sulcus rise. It's angled to whatever. Well, moving on, we developed the ciliary body inner diameter formula, which also had the sulcus lens rise, but for the first time, we discovered that the scotopic pupil size of the patient pre-op has an influence on the post-op volt. Again, the greatest composer is someone who can remember a melody that no one else can remember. That's obvious. We know that if the pupil is smaller, the lens goes back, if the pupil is larger, the lens goes up. But somehow, no one thought, and we didn't think about it, it just came out of the statistical regression, that pupil size makes a difference to the final bolt. Then we have AIOCT, and Andrea, who's going to speak to us today, and Eikiru have been working very, very diligently on these concepts with many others. The Saldivars, Roberto Saldivars put in 25,000 ICLs. He's been doing it since the early 90s. He actually probably was the one who had the idea of making the hole. He was doing it himself manually back in the 90s. And so they're using AI now with ultrasound, and they're doing it both with handheld ultrasound and with high frequency. So handheld ultrasound is UBM. That's about 30 megahertz. Even though some of the labels say 50, it's not, because it depends on how you label a transducer. The ARC scan is 60 megahertz. It is, if you name it the same way. And then we need to sort of look into the future. And I think at the end of this course, you will start to understand that what we're going to end up with is some kind of hybrid model that has statistical power to do the average eyes, but then we're going to need a massive collection of outliers to be able to learn why we still get an eye that goes whomp or an eye that goes boom. And it just happens. And it's because sometimes the ciliary body diameter is so much smaller than you'd expect for that anterior chamber depth or whatever, that it's just not in the model. Models only describe the data that you put into it. And never events are rare, so you need a lot of never events to make the model know how to avoid a never event. Did you see it? There's no magic to this thing. You're not going to build a model using average eyes and detect the outliers. You're not going to do that because that involves extrapolation, and extrapolation doesn't work. So, without further ado, we will have our first speaker, Andrea Russo, who will now talk to us about his sizing.